Right, let's take another look at the morning's papers. We're joined by Ryan Saby and Shona Craven. Guys, morning again to you. Thank you so much for sticking around. Let's take this story here that I think you picked out in the Mail. This is, in fact, we are waiting for the Prime Minister to speak at the Munich Security Conference, aren't we? And we've got an idea of what he might have to say. Take us through this reporting here.
Yeah, there's a few key themes and key issues that the Prime Minister wants to raise when he's in Munich at the Security Summit. And one of the things is that there cannot be this over-dependence on America, that Britain now in this sort of changing position of America and the sort of unreliability of Donald Trump, they actually have to move towards more interdependence towards Europe. And I think one of the things that the Prime Minister and France and Germany are looking towards is what Donald Trump said about Greenland. It's, potentially trying to acquire a country that is part of NATO, or at least part of Denmark. And I think they just cannot rely on America. Now, it's interesting to hear Marco Rubio talking about how Europe and America will always be entwined. Now, it's quite easy. It's a sheer contrast to what J.D. Vance said last year when he attacked Europe over immigration and free speech. But I think there is just that underlying issue that Keir Starmer just knows that that Europe has to be, at the centre for Britain in terms of defence, security, and even he'll go on to talk about prosperity as well.
Yeah, and also that message does tie in with what Donald Trump has talked about, how Europe does need to step up and spend more on defence, and that's part of the message, isn't it? And he's suggesting doing it in cooperation with Europe, perhaps to save a bit of money because they can do joint procurement and joint purchasing. What did you make of what Starmer is saying, especially having listened to Marco Rubio and his message? Yeah, well, we're expecting to hear some quite diplomatic language from the Prime Minister saying that the US's national security position is evolving. Erratic might be another word, or completely unpredictable and terrifying could be another. But, yeah, I think that is going to be emphasised diplomatically, but you've also got this line about, dangerous times, and them saying we're not the Britain of the Brexit years anymore, because we know that in dangerous times we would not take control by turning inward, we would surrender it. I won't let that happen. But, I mean, when we voted on Brexit, obviously you would hope people would imagine that there could be dangerous times ahead and kind of factor that into trying to take a more isolationist approach. But here we are now. Just in light of that story and what we heard from Marco Rubio as well, you guys were listening in, there was this idea of Europe and the US being intertwined, but what did you make of sort of it being peppered with this idea of our civilization, this Western civilization, this Christian culture? That's speaking to a very specific audience, isn't it? Yeah, I think there was a reference to the godless communist threats and things. Perhaps doesn't feel like a speech for today.
Yeah, it shows that they are very. The Americans, when they come, when J.D. Vance came over last year, it's a security conference, but they are willing to go well and above and beyond the sort of key themes of the summit, actually. And is it something that European nations will want to get behind, or do you think that there will be any commentary about it? Because it seems as if we've got your back as long as you behave in the way that we do.
Well, exactly, and you can talk a lot about history and you can talk a lot about tradition and shared values, but I think when we can see for ourselves the values that are being demonstrated by the US in the US, let alone globally, I don't know that the warm words, certainly much warmer than last year, but I don't know how much store people will put in that. It's a bit of a handbrake time. We're going to talk about fat jabs next.
Shona, or weight loss jabs.
Weight loss jabs. You hate that term.
I hate fat jabs.
Don't you?
I hate it.
It's fair enough. It's quick to say, but it's not when you then have a big discussion about it, I guess. But let's move to the Times. I think a few of the papers picked this up, haven't they? The idea that you can nip out and have your weight loss jab in your lunch break. Yeah, it's quite an odd way. Maybe instead of having lunch. Well, exactly. It's quite an odd way to put it, isn't it? Making it seem like a very casual thing to do, when what Boots are sort of emphasising is a human connection rather than ordering these injections online. You go and speak to someone, you might feel reassured by that. But the Times piece, quite rightly points out concerns that people are lying about their weight or submitting, falsified pictures and things, because, of course, you have to meet criteria and you have to be over a certain weight for this to be appropriate to be prescribed. So I'll be really interested to see
if there is a big take-up. I don't know how the prices compare with the online providers, but I've read things about people turning up with, lead-lined pockets and things like that to step on the scales and qualify. So I wonder if they'll really be assuring that, not in the UK, obviously, because this hasn't been available, but I'd be interested to see, given that there's already 1.9 million people using these jabs, that was by the end of last year, how many more people are in the market? I mean, to me, it's quite a major step to take. And we all, I think, know probably in our own lives of people who are maybe taking these jabs and then perhaps aren't obese or aren't anymore, but are using it for sort of maintenance purposes. So, yeah, I'd be really interested to see how this takes off.
Yeah, and of course, for the government, they're presumably quite pro this idea because it could take pressure off the NHS. There are sort of so many conditions linked to obesity, and if it can tackle that, then the hope is that that will not only be good for people's health, but also the health of the NHS.
Yeah, absolutely. We covered some this subject in the week, actually. And if you do take these weight loss jabs and you do some moderate exercise, I think it's about 5,000 steps a day, you do keep the weight off, and it can actually save the NHS about £17 billion. So there are big, big savings. So you can see why the government are encouraging people, to go through the NHS or even go privately if they can actually, it can sort of help the bottom line, really.
OK. And just because I think we've got enough time, and I don't know if my director Emma's going to tell me off, but on the same page as that story about the weight loss jabs, there's a brilliant picture of a couple of tawny owls that fell down a chimney in Surrey. Apparently got soot in their eyes, but I just haven't got the Times today.
Can you see that?
Turn to that page on page 6. There we go.
I'll hold it up.
The one
can you see it?
In the light for
I love it.
particularly.
Unplanned sleepover on a chandelier and on a curtain. I mean, that is just brilliant. A couple of tawny owls. How nice.
Unplanned sleepover.
Hilarious. So there you go. Sorry to interject your news with that nonsense, but I thought that was a lovely picture. Right, where are we going to next?
Worth lingering on the owl. OK, we're going to talk about pubs now. This is part of the Telegraph's campaign, isn't it? They've got this push to save our pubs. There have been lots of concerns from the industry about business rates and the rest. So what's this latest
Yeah, one
line?
of the campaign for Real Ale, that they are concerned that if you have there'll only be a protection if you are the last pub in the village or town, and they're saying that any other pubs that are standing there in towns and cities could be turned into flats, houses, or takeaways. Now, they say that the Telegraph here, the headline is Labour will let greedy developers close pubs, but I think the government have hit back quite strongly against this, because I think there is an issue. There are lots of pubs closing down. If no one wants to take them on, you probably want something in its place that can help the high street at least. But you can kind of see that there are protections where people in villages and towns can actually club together to take over these pubs. Now, I don't think the government are trying to take that right away, but it wouldn't be great if pubs that have stood there for decades and decades are then turned into houses and takeaways. But it seems like a big campaign issue, and it seems like the pub sector has been hit hard in recent months, as you mentioned about the business rates, Labour MPs being banned from pubs as well. So they kind of have been through it, and it's taken their toll.
Well, as you say, the government have hit back. They say the claims are simply not true. Then go on to explain that they've got this new Pride in Place programme. £5 billion. And I think Keir Starmer tried to announce that this week, but was kind of put off by lots of questions about other things. Right,
yeah, I mean, there's separate issues here. You have the issues facing hospitality and pubs closing and the building being left empty. And then you have the issue of the housing crisis that we're facing across the UK. So I do think it's a bit irresponsible to talk about greedy developers, because the actual cost of building and developing is really high, and that's why we have a housing crisis. So if we're going to brand anyone who wants to turn a disused building into housing greedy, then we're going to be at a bit of a standstill. But it sort of sounds like they're going to compulsory purchase a pub halfway through them pulling a pint and shutter it. But I don't think that's quite what's happening.
No, there really would be outrage if that was
there would.
Let's move to the front page of The Sun. Shona, you wanted to talk about Gordon Ramsay appealing to the Beckhams.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this because I find this an extremely cynical move by Gordon Ramsay. You have to read quite far into the story to find on Wednesday his new 6-part Netflix documentary, Being Gordon Ramsay, airs. What a coincidence, then, that he is using a quite sad family disagreement to get publicity for himself. He says that he's acting as a peacemaker. He says he has a good relationship with Brooklyn. I think if we know one thing, it's that Brooklyn Beckham is unhappy with his family and their associates using the media to make claims. And I think he said some pretty mad things. It's hard, isn't it, when you're infatuated? Love is blind. It's easy to get carried up on that roller coaster. Those are not the words of a peacemaker. That's quite a partial position. I feel sorry for Brooklyn. I think this is shameless by Gordon Ramsay.
Hasn't Mr Ramsay got some issues with his own family as well? His daughter and Adam Peter, wasn't there some issues around that wedding? Not to
I'm pleased to say I don't actually follow his family dramas too closely, but...
Go on, Ryan, short paper.
Do you take the same kind of cynical approach, or do you think... I mean, he is friends, I think, isn't he, with Beckham Senior?
He says he's friends with them all, but I don't think he is anymore.
I would say it's a fantastic interview by my colleague, Henry Mooney, but, Gordon Ramsay's got, when they go on these publicity tours, you can throw in a load of extra questions, and she's managed to get him talking about the Beckhams and the relationship, and he seems to think that time will heal in this case. It's the cliche, but he will come back and he'll back into the arms of his mum and dad, but time will tell.
Well, we'll have to watch social media and see if that's the case.
Watch it very, very
probably
carefully.
we'll find out. Ryan, this is a story I spotted, actually, yesterday, which is absolutely fascinating, about how much money social media influencers can make. And it's a huge amount, isn't it?
Yeah, no, just by putting one post onto, if you've got a big following, you've got a few million followings. There's an example here, Molly May Haig, who's a 26-year-old former Love Island contestant. She can actually earn up to £60,000 per sponsored post, which is an absolutely staggering amount. And this kind of feeds into the story that there's 1,000 taxpayers aged under 30, which has gone up by just over 10%. But I think this is where the issue here is that there's so much more being spent on advertising or on social media. I think it's £1 billion that will be this year. So the eyeballs are, on social media. That's where the money is, and people are going to take advantage of it. And even the government, party to this as well. They are paying influencers. It says over £500,000 here, a year just to get their campaigns and get publicity. We've seen it in Downing Street as well, where they invite, I was at a press conference with the Chancellor not too long ago. They have social media influencers in there asking her questions. They are playing a bigger part on covering issues.
For some people, some generations, that's where they tend to get their news or their information from different social media platforms.
Yeah, I think some people will be going, oh, that's ridiculous, £60,000, what a waste of money. But we have to remember that back in the day, if you were taking out adverts in a broadsheet newspaper that was targeting your demographic, that would not be cheap. And, the people who follow these influencers, that's a specific market. And if you know you're going to reach them, then obviously it's worth it for the advertisers. The problem, I think, is young people looking at this and thinking, OK, my career plan will be to be an influencer, certainly if they've seen the size of the student loans for people going to university.
Yeah, is there anything wrong with that?
The thing that's wrong with it is that only a limited number of people can ever achieve this reach and this income. There's nothing wrong with dabbling online, I suppose, if you're old enough. But, we need to be realistic about how many people are actually making that money. Other people will be making a small amount of money, possibly at the expense of other things that they could be training or doing and going down that route when it might not be very profitable.
It's interesting how much the ads work, Anna?
How much the ads work? They do work. I mean, I'm terrible. I seem to buy something to wear every time I go
closing on social
Instagram.
media because the ads are too good.
Yeah, it's too expensive. I need to give it up.
Indeed. Ryan, Shona, thanks so much for being with us. As always, really good discussion this morning. We'll be back in a couple of minutes' time. We're back in Munich, where the Prime Minister is due to give an address. Stop him.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?